Clash of the Classics.
Hey everyone, that's right, it's time for Clash of the Classics. Can't wait to get started on this one. I'm Donnie.
And I'm Chris.
Hey, if you're just joining us, if you're new to the show, perhaps this is your first time, we welcome everyone. Here's what you're going to find. Every week, we roll the clock back, we pit two classic models against one another, and then we vote on the stuff that we like best. We look at powertrain, we might look at interior stuff, exterior stuff, some suspension, engine, transmission, that type of thing. At the end of the conversation, we'll just kind of chop it up, discuss which one we like best, and as always, we welcome you to go right here to our YouTube channel or our Facebook page or our website, horsepoweronline.com. Let us know which car you like best. Today, it's all about the 1969 Dodge Super Bee six-pack battling that 1969 Ford Cobra 428 Fairlane. One thing is for sure, Chris, these are two models that are pretty cool. One of them, the Ford Fairlane, we don't often see. This is a car that isn't real, I guess, ubiquitous in the classics world. In fact, if it's anything but, it's just the opposite. Rarely do you see the car, but as we're going to find out, a couple of weeks ago, you asked the question, is rarity or does rarity necessarily invite value? And at that time, 2 or 3 or 4 weeks ago, I said to you sometimes, here is a case or an instance when it does not.
Yeah, it is tough to find. I mean, even just doing a general internet search, they're a little limited on the picture selection.
Well, one thing is Ford didn't build a lot of them, and let's jump back to 1969. Before I say anything about this Fairlane Cobra, I don't think there's a car in 1969 that's not cool. It seems like every engineering department for Ford, Chevy, GM, all the way through Pontiac, Olds, everybody, Mopar, all got together and had great ideas time and time again in 1969. But one thing is for sure, in 69, Ford was kind of, they were trailing in terms of the muscle car, the budget muscle car models. GM and Mopar, they were definitely leading the pack. They were leading the brackets with that warrior type, weekend warrior type model. This car is essentially a dressed down Fairlane hardtop. It's got Cobra Snake emblems on the side, a blacked out grille, and that's really the only evidence or the only clue that you would have that this is really a muscle car. Pretty cool car, though. Talking 335 horsepower was what Ford claimed it had. Actual testing was closer to 400, and the reason why they did that, because of insurance reasons, it was really difficult to try to insure it back in those days with advertising 400 horsepower. 14 seconds in the quarter mile, 400 pound-feet of torque, 0 to 60 in 5 seconds. Like I said, close to 400 ponies. The cool part, at least I thought, and you can see in the images that we have here on the screen, was the full functional hood scoop fed the air cleaner that opened up under heavy throttle when the driver would depress the accelerator. This plate would open and it would allow extra air down and through the throttle plates. But a really cool car, a 430 rear diff in that old bulletproof Detroit locker housing. Definitely state-of-the-art for the time, but can you imagine trying to drive a 3-speed car with a 430 rear diff on the freeway? That would beat the heck out of you at about 50 miles an hour. You'd be screaming.
This thing is getting up off the line, though. I mean, damn.
Yeah, that's it. It's definitely moving. There's no doubt about that.
Now, I had a quick question. I was under the impression that the Cobra moniker or the Cobra badge was exclusive to Mustang, but I'm finding that is not the case.
Correct. It's exclusive to the engine.
Okay.
It's the 428 Cobra jet motor.
Gotcha.
And they did use it in the Mustang, but it was used in other models as well. But again, as we said a moment ago, Ford really didn't have a lot of models back in those days in the late 60s, early 70s, with the exception of the Mustang. And some of the Torino models, which essentially this Fairlane is kind of like that, some of the Galaxy 500, but nothing really to rival a 69 Camaro, a 69 Charger. There wasn't really anything to do that, and so Ford decided they wanted to jump on that bandwagon and put something out. I like the car. I mean, you've seen it now. You've taken a look at it. You've spent some time around it. What do you think?
I dig it. I honestly didn't know that this existed. I mean, I had heard Fairlane. I'd seen some images, and it was kind of, in my opinion, for my taste, what I like fairly lackluster when you put it up against, a Camaro or a Mustang or a Challenger. It didn't quite do it for me. This is a totally different story. I would be stoked to drive one of these, and I'd be really stoked to drive one of these in 1969 because here is what you're most likely to find on the radio. Aquarius, Let the Sun Shine In from Fifth Dimension. Love that song. You got Crimson and Clover, wasn't my favorite, but still a classic tune. Proud Mary from Creedence Clearwater Revival, always a classic. And Boy Named Sue from Johnny Cash.
Now, that was a cool tune. That was a cool jam.
That was a great jam. Those are just a couple of the great jams that came out in that era.
I got to agree with that. But before we go any further, I want to talk about the largest automatic transmission network on the planet. They are the Automatic Transmission Rebuilders Association. ATRA makes our class of the classics possible. No one knows transmissions better than ATRA. With a member network stretching from coast to coast, there is no better place to be when your car is experiencing transmission troubles than at an authorized ATRA service provider. Head on over to atra.com. There you're going to find a ton of service provider members near you. All right, now let's jump on over to a car that I really like. In fact, over the past 8 or 10 years that we've been doing this show, by now some of our loyal listeners know this Dodge, 1969 Dodge Super B, this model, the six-pack, definitely one of my favorite old classic cars. I like the grille. I like the way the front end design, that whole clip, really kind of cool. Again, difficult to find a car that I think is more muscle-oriented than a 69 or a 1970 Dodge. Fill in the blank with whatever model you want. Dodge nailed it back in those days.
They really were the epitome of just muscle and just cool. Like that. Just Dodge just has it nailed. And even the names are cool. You got RT, Hemi, all these. It's just so bitchin'.
They did a great job. Unfortunately, they kind of got away from that a little bit during the 80s, and they never really were able to recover. But let's talk about this Super B six-pack. It's got the 440 wedge motor with 3 Holly 2-barrels sitting on top of an Edelbrock high-rise manifold. This thing was absolutely cool. You're talking about somewhere, do the quick math, like just under 1,400 CFM worth of carburetor on top of that puppy. You talk about running. This car here, also a 411 rear differential, so a little taller than the Ford, but still a 411 with a 3-speed transmission would kind of be a little bit, would be tough on the freeway.
Yeah, but I feel like with a car like this, the freeway is kind of the least of your concerns. I feel like you're a little bit more preoccupied with how fast am I getting up off the line? How quickly am I crossing that quarter-mile line?
Well, fully agreed. Also, this engine running out at right at about 390 horsepower with almost 500 pound-feet of torque. This car, we didn't talk about the price on the Ford. Didn't mention that. Let me mention it to you now. It was $3,200 on that Cobra Jet car, that Fairlane. This car running in at about 43, so about, what is that, $900 or $1,000 more, somewhere in that neighborhood. And pretty cool, though. Here's the thing. I like what Dodge did. They called it the B because it was the B body, hence the Super B. 440 motor, as I said again. The only engine that was probably more powerful back in those days was the 426 Hemi. This car was available with that engine, but for here and today, with our conversation, going to stick with that 440. What a car. I mean, NASCAR really latched onto the Mopar product, and this is one of the reasons why.
Yeah, this is a fantastic unit.
I like everything about what Dodge did here. But again, we're talking about $1,000 difference in base sticker price. But between these two cars, I'm just going to let the cat out of the bag now. Between these two cars, there really isn't a comparison, at least in my mind. I like that Ford. Ford did a good job of trying to put something on the market that would compete with some of the other models. But between these two cars, there is not a question in my mind. You give me the keys to each one and say, pick. In less than 10 seconds, I'm picking the keys to the Dodge.
It's Dodge every time. No question about it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Same thing in 1969. As I said a moment ago, the engineering departments didn't matter what company you're talking about, engineering did a great job with respect to styling, uniqueness, distinctive features. I mean, all of those things in 69, so much cooler than they are today. today it's a different world that we live in, hence why we like to go back with Clash of the Classics. But that's about all the time we have for this particular episode. Chris, I think you and I obviously are agreeing it's all about the Dodge Super B, the Super B six-pack. Let us know which car you like best. Hope you've enjoyed the show. Today's Clash of the Classics made possible by the largest automatic transmission network in the world. They are the Automatic Transmission Rebuilders Association, or simply put, the ATRA. With service providers all across America, it's easy to find peace of mind when it comes to transmission service and repair. Next time you're having a transmission problem, you even think you've got a transmission concern, head on over to atra.com. For Donnie, for Chris, for the entire Horsepower for an Hour crew, we'll see you next week with a brand new battle.